Hey guys, tonight we follow smoke trails through dark woods past cracked stones and trembling villagers. A girl is screaming, or maybe it's the crowd, and you're standing just far enough back that the heat doesn't singe your eyebrows, but close enough to feel the judgment roll off their pitchfork-wielding faces. The moon hides behind the clouds, the stars pretend they don't see. The fire crackles like it knows something the rest of you don't. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far our little circle reaches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you smell is smoke. Not campfire smoke. Not grandma's chimney kind of nostalgic puff. This is rough and dirty wet hay, burnt fabric, and the unmistakable tang of fear. Someone shoves past you, and their breath smells like clove and ale. Maybe they came for the spectacle. You're not so sure. In the middle of the square, lashed to a post, blackened with old char, is a girl who looks no older than 20. Her dress is torn, but not filthy. Her hair is damp with sweat. And her eyes, those don't scream. They stare at you through the smoke. The villagers chant something old, in a dialect half forgotten. Words that used to mean harvest and fertility now mean guilt and damnation. You recognize a few of them. Your mother used to mutter them when she thought you were asleep. You never asked where she learned them. Someone hurls a stone. It doesn't hit her. It hits the base of the post and rolls off into the mud. The fire's still low, licking at the kindling. Maybe it's your imagination, but the flames seem hesitant, like they're waiting. She conjured the plague, an old woman says, next to you, voice thick with spittle. I saw her curse the miller's boy. You nod because it's easier than arguing, but you saw the miller's boy. He coughed once, choked on a beetle, then went back to stomping rats behind the bakery. No curses, no omens, just poor ventilation. Still, when the town gets scared, it looks for someone to burn. And she Crow-Eye, they call her, just didn't run fast enough. Historians still argue whether medieval witch trials were about superstition or social control. But standing here, boots half buried in muck, you realize it's not about either. It's about fear, plain and loud. The fire catches. You feel the shift, like the whole town is holding its breath and pressing its weight onto her chest. But she doesn't scream. Instead, she opens her mouth, and just before the smoke hides her face completely, you see her lips move. A whisper, maybe a word, maybe your name. The flames surge. You take a step back. Then two, something cold brushes your ankle. You look down. A feather, black slick with ash somehow still whole. The village erupts into shouts. The mayor declares the evil purged. A man you've never seen before cries. Children are ushered home. The smoke spirals upward, slow and thick. You leave with your collar pulled high and your thoughts spinning harder than the wheel at the tavern's back room. She didn't scream. That stays with you. Back at the inn, you can't sleep. The straw pokes through the mattress, and the walls groan with every breeze. You hear a raven's call just before dawn, though ravens don't usually come this far south. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's something else entirely. You roll over, pulling the thin wool blanket up to your nose. But behind your eyelids, you still see her eyes open, watching unblinking. They say the last witch burned in Europe in the 1700s. They say accusations were political, a way to strip land or settle scores. And they say those burned were always guilty of something, even if not magic. But this feels wrong in your bones. The next morning you walk to where the post stood. The ashes are still hot. The ground smolders like it resents the sky. And in the charred debris you find a shoe, small, left foot, burned at the toe. You pocket it. Why you don't know. Maybe because no one else would. Maybe because you're beginning to feel like someone should remember her. You stay another night. Just one more, you tell yourself. But the girl at the inn's counter looks at you strange, like she knows you're lying. Like she saw the way you stared at the fire. The world's full of stories about witches and saints. And most of them are written by people who never heard the wind whisper in the wrong direction. Here's a fun one. In ancient Egypt, people believed you could ward off evil spirits with crocodile dung sunscreen. Wild, right? But tonight you kind of get it. When you're scared, logic doesn't help. You reach for whatever might work. That's what they did last night. They burned a girl, and now you're starting to think they burned the wrong one. You lace up your boots, tight, mud-caked cracked leather things that have seen better days. There's a path narrow, nearly hidden, that runs behind the graveyard and disappears into the trees. You don't know why, but your feet turn toward it. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's her eyes, or maybe, just maybe, you're not ready to let this story end. You follow the path because it doesn't want to be followed, because it's crooked, overgrown, and shrouded by trees that lean in like gossips. The branches above form a canopy so thick that even the morning sun can't cut through it. The air is damp, full of rot and quiet warnings. Crow-Eye they called her. Real name you don't know yet. They say she never blinked, that she had one blue eye and one black, and that if she stared at you long enough, your thoughts would turn inside out. But you remember, her eyes both were dark. Yes, but not soulless, not voids. There was something in them, something human. The trail leads past a split rock you recognize from an old map, a marker from the days when this forest wasn't just a borderland, but a place with names, stories, and tax collectors who regretted their career choices. You pass a toppled milestone, its Roman etchings nearly gone. Just another forgotten thing like her. You find her shack before noon. That's a surprise. You were expecting days, maybe weeks. But it's there half-collapsed, moss-covered, with smoke still ghosting up from a cracked chimney. Either someone's squatting or she didn't live alone. Inside it smells like sage and damp parchment. Bundles of dried herbs hang from the ceiling beams. Some recognizable rosemary thyme, and others with names you'd need 3 tongues to pronounce. A shelf holds bottles of oilbone and ink. On the floor there's a circle drawn in ash and salt, the kind your grandmother pretended not to know. And in the middle of that circle, a raven feather. Perfect. Untouched, exactly like the one you found at the pyre. No blood, no sign of a struggle, just stillness. You poke around. Under the straw bed is a locked box, tiny silver, with something carved into the lid, a spiral wrapped in thorns. A symbol you've seen once before, stitched into the sleeve of a rebel banner during the forgotten uprising. Historians still argue whether that rebellion was political, spiritual, or just exceptionally bad timing. A creak behind you. You spin, hand on the dagger you half forgot you still carry. But no one's there, just wind, or so it seems. You leave the shack feeling watched, not hunted, just observed, judged maybe. Back in town, no one wants to talk about her, not really. You ask about Crow-Eye at the tavern, and the barkeep wipes a glass that doesn't need wiping. He says she arrived 5 winters ago, carrying only a satchel and a book She never let anyone touch. She kept to herself, helped deliver a few babies, healed a few coughs. People were uneasy but grateful. Then the rains came. The river flooded. 2 children drowned. One of them had been treated by her the week before. The other had once stolen a charm from her porch. The village put it together like a puzzle they'd been waiting to finish. And just like that, grateful turned to grim. You sip ale and listen to their retellings. The mayor's wife says she saw Crow-Eye whisper to a dead dog that came back twitching. A boy insists she turned a toad into his sister. His sister rolls her eyes. Still, no one mentions a trial. There wasn't one. No priest, no inquiry, no confession. Just the fire. You ask about her family. The answers come slower. Someone thinks she came from the north, maybe Grevna, where the river speaks in riddles, and most grandmothers still bury hair under the hearth. Someone else mutters something about a convent burned in a raid, and a girl who walked out of the ashes without a single blister. Quirky tidbit time. Did you know that in some 15th century French towns, witches were required by law to wear red shoes so others could spot them easily in a crowd? Very subtle, very fashion-forward. You spend that night sitting on the hill above the village. The pyre is just ashes now. Kids dare each other to poke through it, then squeal and run like they touched ghosts. You hold the burned shoe in your hands. And you remember she didn't blink. The girl who doesn't blink isn't afraid. She's waiting. You dream of her that night, only it's not a dream. Not really. The forest is too real. The raven feather presses against your palm like it's warm. And she's there standing under a twisted oak, wearing the same scorched dress, only now it's whole. Her mouth moves, but the words come out wrong echoes in reverse, like someone rewinding a hymn. You wake with dirt under your nails. The innkeeper says you were gone all night, that you stumbled back in at dawn barefoot, covered in leaves. But your boots are beside your bed clean, dry. Something's pulling you forward, not guilt anymore. Curiosity, something quieter. You head back to the shack. This time you're not alone. Tracks in the dirt, light, careful steps. Too small for a man. And beside them bird prints, large ones, not like any native species you know. Inside the shack the silver box is gone, so is the feather. You look around slower this time. On the wall behind the herb rack is a word drawn in soot. Not your language, maybe not any language, but it feels like a name. Hers, yours. You leave the shack with more questions than answers, but one thing is clear. She didn't die. Or if she did, she got better. You weren't planning to stay this long. You told yourself 2 nights tops. One to watch the fire, one to shake the feeling. But it's been 4 now, and your boots are starting to mold. You keep telling people you're just passing through, but you're the only one believing it anymore. Because her name, whatever it was before they called her Crow-Eye, is stuck to your ribs now. The way she looked at you, the word she might have mouthed, the feather, the missing silver box. It's all building into a story you didn't ask to be part of, but here you are. Chapter 3, No Exit in Sight. You were never a hero. You've got the scars to prove it. You deserted the king's army during the siege of Darnmore, snuck out under cover of a thunderstorm, still wearing your cuirass and cursing the war like it owed you something. Since then you've wandered from one half-collapsed tavern job to the next, usually keeping just ahead of debt collectors' husbands, and one particularly persistent traveling mime. But something about this girl Crow-Eye has changed your pace. Maybe it's the way she didn't beg. Maybe it's the dream. Maybe it's just been a while since something truly mattered. You start asking around about the forest, the part past the river, the one everyone avoids, unless they're suicidal or selling mushrooms. The locals call it the throat. The name's not on any official maps, but it shows up in whispers. People who go in either come out wrong or don't come out at all. There are stories, of course, old ones, about spirits and bones and trees that bleed. One fisherman swears the trees hum when the moon is high. Another woman tells you that if you follow the ravens, they'll either lead you to treasure or your grave. She doesn't specify which is more likely. Fringe history break. In 1675, a Swedish woman named Myrta claimed to have met tree women in the forest who gave her milk that let her talk to the dead. She was executed for blasphemy, but her village reported visions for years afterward. Historians still argue whether it was mass hysteria, ergot poisoning, or a very elaborate prank. You start seeing her, not just in dreams now, in the corner of your eye, in reflections. The face in a puddle doesn't match your own, and sometimes when you blink, the wind sighs like it's disappointed in you. You revisit the shack a third time. This time something's different. There are footprints in the ash around the salt circle your size. But you haven't been inside since the box vanished. Unless you sleepwalk like a dramatic plot twist someone's playing with your timeline. You decide to walk the perimeter of the forest just to see, just to feel. Maybe she left a trail. Maybe she wants you to follow. You find something near the north edge. It's a charm. Simple leather cord with a polished stone and a tuft of dark hair. It's hanging from a branch like bait or a warning. You touch it. The hair's still soft. The stone is warm. And beneath your fingers, you feel the thrum of something old. You take it because of course you do. That night your dreams change again. She speaks this time, sort of. Her words don't sound like yours, but your mind understands them anyway. Stop running. Truth is rot in still water. Not everything buried stays dead. Poetic, you think, for a ghost. In the dream, she's not burning. She's not even afraid. She's walking ahead of you, barefoot in the moss, and the sky is cracked open above her. No sun, no moon, just stars that blink like watching eyes. You wake up with the charm wrapped around your wrist, knotted too tightly to remove. You laugh, because of course you do. It's either that or scream. At the inn, the old man who sweeps the stairs finally talks to you. He's missing 3 teeth and smells like soup, but his voice is steady. She's not the first, he says, sweeping nothing in particular, but she might be the last. You ask what he means. He shrugs. Some witches, they get burned. Some burn back. You think about that for a while. About what it means to burn back. To not die screaming, but to change something. And then you remember that map. The one you used to carry, half-rotted, now stuffed, at the bottom of your pack. It was drawn by a deserter, like you claimed he found an altar, deep in the forest, that shimmered when touched. Most called him mad, but you always kept the scrap. You dig it out, compare it to the shape of the woods. There's a mark just like the one on the silver box, the spiral wrapped in thorns. You don't know how she's tied to it yet, but you know you have to find it. The charm pulses once on your wrist. You whisper her name, even though you still don't know it. Crow-Eye, you say it again softer, and this time something answers. You head into the forest before dawn. Not the part near the village, the real forest, the throat, the kind of place that doesn't just swallow people, it digests them slowly. Mist clings to your boots like it's trying to pull you down. Every branch feels like a finger brushing your shoulder. Still you walk. Because by now you're not chasing her out of curiosity. You're chasing her because you're starting to believe she wants you to. The charm on your wrist grows warmer the deeper you go. Not hot, not painful, just insistent like a heartbeat you didn't know was yours. And the birds don't even get started on the birds. They're silent. Not dead, just not performing. Like they're watching, like they're waiting to see how this chapter goes before deciding whether to sing. The first real sign appears just past a deadfall tree shaped like a question mark. There, scratched into the bark, is the spiral thorn symbol. Smaller than the one on the box, fainter, but definitely the same. You touch it, and the charm pulses hard enough to make your fingertips tingle. Someone's left a trail, not a breadcrumb kind, but a witch's trail. Quiet, symbol-based, and designed to keep out the idiots. You keep walking. It's early afternoon when you find the stone circle. 6 stones each taller than you, arranged in a pattern you recognize but can't name. They're old, so old. Their surfaces are smooth as river stones. One is split down the middle, moss growing like stitches. Another has rusted hooks driven into it. Sacrificial decorative historians still argue whether standing stones like these were used for rituals, calendars, or just really fancy burial markers. The truth's probably a mix of all 3. You step into the center of the circle. The air shifts. It's like stepping underwater, every sound muffled, every color just a shade too vivid. You hear something move behind you, but when you turn, there's only forest. Then a whisper, "You're late." You don't run. You should, but you don't. Because she's there. Not ghostly, not see-through, not some glowing-eyed banshee, wailing revenge. Just her, crow-eye, whole, unburned, wearing the same dress now mended. Her eyes are just as dark, just as still. "You're not dead, you say." She raises an eyebrow. You say that like it's a compliment. You should ask how, why, what she is now, but you don't. Because none of that feels important. Instead, you say they said you cursed the river, the children, the harvest. She tilts her head. And did you believe them? No. You mean it. She watches you for a moment longer, then walks past you, brushing your sleeve. Good. Because if you had, you'd be ashes too. That's the first time you really believe the villagers were right, just not in the way they thought. She is something else. Not just a healer, not just a girl. You sit down on one of the stones, even though your instincts scream not to. Why me? She doesn't answer right away. Instead, she kneels in the center of the circle, digs a shallow trench with her hands, and starts laying out small objects, a feather, a sliver of bone, a copper coin so old it's barely recognizable. You remembered, she says, placing the items in a crescent. That matters. Remembered what? Me. That's not the answer you expected. But something about it feels right. Like this moment has already happened and you're just catching up to it. Another quirky fact for you. In 12th century Ireland, there was a belief that some witches weren't born, but remembered into existence. If someone remembered your true name in the right place at the right time, you'd simply appear. No birth, no death, just memory rebinding flesh to bone. You wonder if that's what this is. You watch her finish the crescent, then place the charm, your charm, at its center. It detaches from your wrist without your permission. Floats almost into her hand. Why did you let them burn you, you ask? Because it's the only thing that doesn't make sense. She smiles, not sad, not angry, just resigned. Because sometimes the truth needs smoke to rise. That one hits you sideways. You're not sure what it means exactly, but it settles in your spine like a weight. Then she looks up, sharp now, alert. They followed you. You turn. 3 figures emerging from the trees like wolves sniffing blood. Town guards only barely. Leather armor, dull swords, one of them already sweating. Someone tipped them off. Maybe the old woman at the inn? Maybe the barkeep? Maybe the forest itself? Doesn't matter. One raises a crossbow. She's bewitched you, he calls. Step away. You raise your hands. She's not hurting anyone. He sneers. She's not human. Crow-Eye stands, slowly, gracefully, as if gravity's a rumor. Neither are you, she says, but no one's tried to burn you yet. Then the crossbow fires. You don't remember moving, just that you're in front of her, and then your shoulder feels like it's been kissed by a blacksmith. You fall, hard. The stone behind you goes dark. Your breath is gone. You hear her whisper something, soft, beautiful, like a lullaby being forgotten. And then, nothing. Silence, and in that silence warmth. When you open your eyes, the guards are gone. Or maybe not gone, just changed. The trees around the stone circle are full of ravens now, watching. Crow-Eye kneels beside you, her hand over your shoulder. The wound's gone, not just healed, gone, like it never existed. What did you do to them, you ask? They saw the truth, she replies. And most men aren't built to survive that. You lean back against the stone heart-thudding skin, still buzzing from whatever just passed through you. So what now? She looks at you, really looks, like she's deciding something. You still don't know your part in this, she says. You nod, not even close. She stands, reaches a hand out to you. Then let me show you. You take it. Because of course you do. You always imagined magic would feel like lightning sharp explosive, the kind of thing that knocked your teeth out of alignment. But walking beside her through the deeper woods, it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like water, slow-moving, patient, ancient. The forest no longer pushes against you, it flows with you. The branches part before she touches them. The air smells sweeter, and the birds, they sing again. Not loud, not cheerful, but enough to make you wonder if they've been waiting for this. Crow-Eye doesn't talk much as you walk, just glances at you from time to time like she's measuring something. Not your worth, your weight maybe. The weight of who you were versus who you might be. You pass a tree with a dozen dolls tied to it, little fabric bundles, each with a different colored thread for a mouth. None of them have eyes. You don't ask why. She stops at a creek so clear it looks unreal. Beneath the surface, smooth stones, silver fish, and one carved mask staring upward, trapped beneath a root. Drink, she says. You hesitate. You've read enough old stories to know that drinking mysterious water rarely ends with cake. But you trust her now. That's the strange part. Somewhere between being healed and hearing her whisper the truth into the trees, you stopped being afraid. So you kneel, cup your hands, sip, and just like that your memories scatter. Not gone, not lost, just rearranged. Like someone took all the books off your shelf and put them back in a better order. You remember your mother's lullaby, the one with the line about wolves at the gate. You remember the soldier who didn't kill you outside Darnmore. You remember the taste of sugar on your 10th birthday. But most of all, you remember her. Not Crow-Eye, but the before her, the child in the field of flowers, the teenager hiding books in the well house, the girl who said, if they come for me, don't let them lie. You had known her, long before the burning, long before the rumors. She looks at you now, waiting for the question, and you ask it. What were we? Her smile is soft, real, sad. Fewer people are born with magic now, and even fewer survive knowing it. When we were children, we tried to change that. Remember, you didn't, not until now. A monastery burned, a book stolen, a teacher who disappeared. You'd forgotten all of it, buried it beneath war and wandering. But now it comes back like floodwater. You had helped her once, you'd loved her once. Maybe not like a lover, but like a twin flame. Someone whose heartbeat matched your own. And when the townsfolk turned on her, you were already gone. Hiding, running. You ask why she didn't call to you. She shrugs. You wouldn't have remembered. Not until you came back. The charm only works when you walk into the story willingly. You both sit on a fallen log, the kind covered in moss, so thick it looks like velvet. She reaches into her satchel black leather, the kind that somehow hasn't aged, and pulls out the silver box. The one that vanished from the shack. She sets it between you. Open it. Your hands tremble a little. You unlatch it. Inside is a mirror, but not your reflection. Instead, the mirror shows you her burning, over and over. The fire licking her feet, her face unreadable. The villagers silent. No screams, no panic, just ritual. You slam it shut. Crow-Eye places a hand over yours. You needed to see it. That wasn't just death, that was forgetting. Then how are you here? Quirky fact break. Some Norse records suggest that certain women called Velur could anchor part of themselves in objects or places. When killed, their spirit wouldn't pass fully until that anchor was broken or buried. Historians still debate whether this was symbolic or a misinterpretation of burial rites. She answers before you ask the mirrors one of them. There are 3, one in the pyre, one in the river, and one still hidden. And I have to find it, she nods, or they'll find it first. You ask who they are. She stands, let me show you. The sun's setting now, and in the dying light, she takes you deeper into the throat, beyond the stones, beyond the symbols, to a clearing you swear wasn't here a minute ago. And in that clearing, bones. Not animal bones, not human. Something in between. Tall as men with arms like wings and skulls too narrow. Arranged in a perfect circle, each facing inward. They came before she says quietly, tried to use the mirror, but it doesn't work like that. It reflects what you bury, not what you want. You kneel beside one of the skeletons. There's a mark on the ribcage, burned in not carved. The same spiral thorn symbol. They weren't witches, she continues. They were thieves. The kind who think power is a thing you can hold. You whisper, so why bring me here? She turns to you, that familiar challenge in her eyes. Because I don't need to hold power anymore. I need to remember how to share it. The air hums. You feel it in your teeth, in your bones, in the places no map ever names. She reaches out again, not to heal, not to guide, but to give. You helped me once, she says, help me again. And without hesitation you take her hand. Because of course you do. The ritual begins without candles, without chants, without dramatic clouds swirling overhead. It begins with silence and a shovel. You're both digging beneath one of the old trees in the clearing. She doesn't explain why this tree or what's buried here, but the urgency in her movements keeps you from asking. Dirt under your nails roots like ribs just below the surface. Each shovelful makes the charm on your wrist throb louder, like it's remembering something before you do. After nearly an hour, you hit something solid, a box stone, not wood. Etched with the same spiral thorn symbol, though worn almost to nothing. You lift it together, heavy like regret. She brushes the dirt off with her sleeve, then places a palm flat against the lid. Nothing happens. She frowns. It's sealed. You need to open it. You blink. Me. You helped hide it. You have to unhide it. Ah, logic. Forest magic logic. It doesn't need to make sense. It just needs to feel true. And unfortunately, this does feel true. You kneel, press your own palm to the stone, and nothing. But then you say it, her name, the one you remembered in the dream in the mirror. in the moss-covered spaces of your old self. Isolde, the stone clicks, the lid lifts, inside a bundle of black fabric, wrapped tight. She takes it out, unrolls it carefully, reverently, like it might start screaming. Inside the cloth bones, delicate, too small for a human. The kind that could belong to a bird or a child or something in between. At the center, nested like a pearl in a cage, rests a silver ring with an obsidian stone. She lifts it with 2 fingers, the second anchor, and the third you ask. She looks toward the north, where it always was, in the place of the first forgetting. You don't have to ask, you know where she means. The village, of course. Mainstream historical moment during Europe's witch trials. Particularly in Germany and Poland, it was common for accused women to be executed and then have their homes burned, gardens salted, or names erased from church records. It wasn't enough to kill the person, their memory had to be scrubbed too. A full erasure. Historians still argue whether these practices were driven by religious fervor or simply a convenient way to steal land from widows and outsiders. It's probably both. As night thickens, the forest helps you back. Trees leaning to part, shadows that hesitate before darkening your path. Crow-Eye Isolde walks ahead of you, now cloak trailing behind her like ink. When you reach the village, it's silent, too silent. Not even the usual cough of distant livestock or the creak of wind-warped shutters. Just stillness, and then a bell, one chime, deep, hollow. You turn to her. She looks tired now. Her skin seems paler, eyes duller, like each step takes a part of her. They know we're here, she says. They've been waiting. You both head toward the old well at the center of town, the one they say she cursed, even though it was already dry by the time they lit the fire. That's where you hid the third anchor. She told you years ago that memory can't just be buried in earth. Sometimes it needs to be forgotten by the people who remember it. So you did what she asked. You helped dig the pit. You dropped the final piece, a braid of her hair, and a bloodied ribbon into the well, then walked away and made yourself forget. You reach it now, and the stones around it are covered in fresh chalk marks. Wards, circles, protection sigils so clumsy you almost laugh. Someone tried to seal the magic, in or out. It's unclear which. Who did this, you ask? She doesn't have to say. You already know. The priest. Not the old trembling one who baptized goats by mistake. The new one. The one who came after the fire, young, clean-shaven, smug. The kind who says bless you like it's a threat. He steps out of the shadows, now flanked by 2 others. One man with a cleaver tucked into his belt, and one woman you recognize as the baker's sister. He raises a hand. Stop. Isolde doesn't flinch. You don't know what you're playing with. He laughs. Don't I? You're a remnant, a curse. You should have stayed buried. You step forward, too tired for diplomacy. You burned her, and she came back. That's not a curse. That's a reckoning. The woman draws something from her coat, a vial. Bright red. Holy tincture, she mutters. From the bishop's own altar. Isolde squints. That's beet juice and vinegar. The woman hesitates. You step toward the well, brushing off the chalk. Underneath, carved into the stones, are the original markings, the ones you and she etched so long ago. You trace your fingers over them. They hum under your touch. The third anchor is still there. You climb onto the well's rim, kneel, and reach down. Your hand closes around something soft, faintly warm. You pull it out. It's the ribbon, her ribbon, still stained, still knotted. You hold it up to her, and then everything changes. The wind howls through the square. Not natural wind, remembering wind. It pulls at hair, at cloaks, at time. The priest stumbles back. The cleaver clatters to the ground. The baker's sister screams, because now they see the truth. The mirror, the memory, the burning all of it floods into them like smoke. Not pain, not violence, just the unbearable weight of knowing. Isolde takes the ribbon, ties it around her wrist, and for the first time since you found her, she looks whole. Not a remnant, not a revenant, just Isolde. The priest falls to his knees. What are you? She steps closer. Something you were never meant to forget. You don't say anything. You don't need to. The truth speaks for itself now. The villagers don't chase you when you leave. They just watch. Some lean against door frames. Others peek from behind shuttered windows, their faces half lit by lanterns. No one speaks. No one stops you. They've seen what they needed to see. Or maybe they still don't believe it. Maybe they're trying to tell themselves it was a trick of the wind, or a hallucination born of guilt and moonlight. That's fine. Truth doesn't need their permission. You and Isolde take the north path out of town, the one lined with nettles and unmarked stones. It's the road used by people who don't come back. You're not even sure where it leads anymore. It didn't matter, really. She walks ahead of you again, ribbon fluttering at her wrist. The silver ring now tucked in a hidden pocket near her collarbone. You ask her what comes next. She doesn't answer right away, just runs her fingers along the spine of a birch tree as you pass. There's still one thing left, she murmurs. The mirror. You blink. But we already. No, she cuts in. The mirror. The first one. The one they used when they named me witch. Ah, that mirror. You remember now. Vaguely. A local relic passed from priest to priest. Rumored to show sin. It was all nonsense, of course. A prop. But in the right hands with the right spell, it became something else. Something crueler. Mainstream historical fact break. In 17th century England, witch prickers used elaborate tests to prove guilt floating trials. Needle tests, mirror rituals. One technique involved gazing into a blessed mirror to see the true nature of an accused person. Naturally, this true nature tended to be whatever made the townsfolk most uncomfortable. Historians still debate whether these mirrors were believed to actually work or were just theater to justify punishment. She says the mirrors kept at the abbey ruins just east of the marshlands. What's left of an old cloister the church abandoned after the first fire. It's supposedly holy ground, but according to her, it's soaked with more secrets than scripture. You reach the edge of the marsh before dawn, and yep, there it is. The abbey, half sunken. Ivy choking the steeple. Stained glass melted from some long-forgotten blaze. It doesn't feel holy. It feels like somewhere grief comes to squat. Isolde halts and looks back at you like she's about to say something serious. But then she just smiles, crooked and unexpected. You're limping. You glance down. Yeah, a little. She shakes her head mock stern. How dramatic. We're literally defying death, and you're hobbling like a haunted librarian. You smirk. You're lucky I didn't bring snacks. I'd have needed breaks. Still would have followed me, she says softly. It's not a question, and she's right. Inside the abbey smells like wet parchment and moss. The pews are long rotted, but the altar still stands intact, covered in dust and wax drippings. On it sits the mirror, oval, gold-framed, covered in a velvet cloth. You approach. Even without touching it, you feel it hum, low like distant thunder. It's not just a mirror, not anymore. She pulls back the cloth, and there it is. But this time your reflection is there, though it blinks a second after you do, and the edges ripple like heat waves. She speaks softly beside you. this mirror was made to take. It shows not what you are, but what others want to believe you are. You stare at yourself, and for a brief, sick moment, you see flames again. Not hers, yours. Your boots melting, your skin peeling, you being named. You step back. I don't want to look at it. Then break it, she says. But you'll need to do it the right way. Let me guess you say rubbing your temples. Symbolically, ritually she corrects, but she's grinning again. She hands you a small curved blade, bone-handled. Not for killing too delicate, but perfect for cutting what can't be seen. She lights a circle of small candles with a whisper, no flint, no tinder. The flames come obediently. You both stand in silence as she begins the rite. And this is where it gets weird. Because it's not loud, it's quiet, whispery, almost lullaby soft. She sings under her breath in a language you don't know but feel you should. The candlelight flickers, the mirror twitches. You draw the blade across your palm, not deep, just enough. Let the blood drip onto the glass. It steams. Then she steps forward and presses her forehead to the frame. I unbind the false reflection, she says, and give back the name taken in fear. The mirror shrieks. Not sound vibration, like grief made physical. And just like that, it cracks. A single fault line down the center, then another, then a spider web. The frame warps. The candle flames shoot upward, then vanish. The mirror drops into a heap of shimmering dust. You both stand there panting like you've just outrun a storm. She reaches out, takes your hand. It's done. Quirky historical side note. In parts of Eastern Europe, it was believed that if a mirror broke during a house blessing, it meant a spirit had been released. Some said it was a bad omen. Others said it meant the house had been freed. Historians still argue whether these customs were rooted in pagan beliefs or adopted by superstitious clergy. Either way, don't break antique mirrors. You never really know. You leave the abbey as the sun rises golden light, catching on the broken window panes like stained glass from another world. Neither of you speaks much. You're tired in a way sleep can't fix, but it's a clean tired, the kind that comes from doing something ancient and necessary. Back on the road, she leans into you a little, not for support, for closeness. You don't flinch, because she's no longer a witch to you. She's no longer branded. She's just Isolde. And maybe, finally you are who you were meant to be too. You don't go back to the village. You could. It would be easy. Just retrace your steps, march into the square, and announce that the curse is lifted, the truth restored, the past exorcised. But somehow you know that's not what this was ever about. This wasn't justice for them. It was remembrance for her and for you. So instead, you and Isolde turn east following the sun, through fields too wild to be farmed, and streams that gurgle like they're laughing at private jokes. It's strange how quiet the world becomes once you've shed the weight of old lies. Your boots feel lighter, the trees seem less suspicious, even the birds sound like they're gossiping more cheerfully. You camp near a crooked hill that night, under a sky spangled so thick with stars, it feels like a sequined blanket was flung over the world. She lies beside you, arms folded under her head, staring up. You remember everything now, she asks. Enough, you say. Enough to know I wasn't just a bystander. She turns her head toward you, one eyebrow cocked. You were never a bystander. You helped them brand me. You don't flinch, you don't argue. Because she's right. You did. Not maliciously, not with the zeal of a true believer, but you stood there, didn't you? When they dragged her to the stake, when the priest spat words that burned as hot as the pyre, you didn't scream. You didn't fight. You let fear seal your throat shut. And that silence, that complicity, is louder than any accusation. Mainstream historical fact. During the height of European witch trials, communal pressure often forced people to betray loved ones. A neighbor's accusation could be self-protection. A relative's silence could be survival. Historians still debate whether these betrayals were conscious choices or just symptoms of mass hysteria, and whether those distinctions even matter. I didn't remember any of that until the well, you murmur. She nods. It's hard to remember the worst parts of ourselves. You sit in silence for a while. The fire crackles. An owl hoots low and lazy. Then she says something that makes you feel like the air's been pulled out of your lungs. I forgave you before I died. You look at her eyes wide. Why? She shrugs a small motion. Because I knew you would come back. It's not romantic what she says, not melodramatic. It's just a fact, like weather, like gravity. You both sleep dreamlessly that night. In the morning, you find her sitting at the edge of the hill, staring into the mist. You join her pulling your coat tighter against the breeze. There's something else, isn't there, you ask? She nods. One last thread. Oh, of course there is. Because what's a story without its final knot? She explains it slowly, like unbraiding tangled hair. After she was branded and burned, part of her soul clung to the charm, the one now bound to your wrist. Another part hid in the 3 anchors you've reclaimed. But the final piece, the spark that was placed inside someone else. Someone else, you echo, narrowing your eyes. You mean me? She shakes her head. No, that would have been too dangerous. They watched you too closely. I had to use someone they wouldn't suspect. Your brain scrambles. Who? Her eyes shine. The midwife. You blink? The midwife. She was like 90. She was 70, Isolde says dryly. And more cunning than 10 bishops combined. She volunteered. Quirky historical tidbit. In many communities, midwives were the first to be accused of witchcraft, not because they practiced magic, but because they understood bodies. They knew how to stop bleeding, how to coax breech births, how to speak truths people didn't want to hear. Historians still argue whether their persecution was driven by religious fear, patriarchal control, or just good old-fashioned jealousy. Probably all 3. She kept the spark alive, Isolde continues, until someone could finish the work. Me. You don't ask how the midwife transferred it to you. Ritual spell bedtime story, laced with truth. Doesn't matter. It's there now. It's been there. The final step, she explains, is to let the spark return. It's not about sacrifice, not exactly. It's about release, completion. Threads only bind when they're held too tight. You breathe slowly, then nod. She takes your hand, presses her forehead to yours, and suddenly, you're not in your body anymore. You're inside something warm and bright and aching. You feel her life, the joy of running through meadows, the sting of betrayal, the terrifying clarity of being condemned. You feel your own guilt winding through hers like ivy. But most of all, you feel a sense of restoration, like pages being slid back into a torn book. When you open your eyes, you're back on the hill. She's still holding your hand, but now she glows, faintly, from the inside out, like a lantern that just remembered how to burn. She blinks slowly, her expression unreadable. Then softly, it's done. The spark's returned. She is whole, for the first time in centuries. And you're still here, still yourself, but somehow lighter, as if a tether you didn't know you carried has finally been unknotted. She rises, brushes soil from her skirt, and looks to the horizon. You know without her saying that this is where the road starts to fork. She has to go somewhere you can't follow, not yet, maybe not ever. You stand rubbing your wrists. The charm's still there, but now it's just a charm. No thrum, no hum, just a memory in silver. You smile. So what now? She leans and kisses your forehead. You live. And just like that, she steps into the mist. No thunder, no dramatic gust of wind, just the sound of your own breath and a warmth lingering on your skin. You sit there for a long time. The hill is quiet. The mist rolls away. The sun climbs lazily over the treetops like it has all the time in the world. You don't move, not because you're sad, though maybe you are a little, but because something inside you has settled, like a bone snapped back into place. You think about what she said. You live. Easier said than done, right? Because how do you go back to normal after that? After ghosts and wells and memories stitched with fire? How do you rejoin a world that burned her once and would do it again if it meant saving face? But you know the answer already. You don't go back. You go forward, and you start walking, not toward any one place, just away from the weight. You pass through unfamiliar villages with lopsided fences and taverns that smell like regret. No one knows who you are. That's fine. You still carry her ring, her ribbon, her charm. And in quiet moments when you hold them in your palm, you swear you can still hear her laugh. Not in a creepy, haunted way, just in a true way. In one of those towns, you hear whispers about a girl accused of summoning a storm that drowned a harvest. No trial yet, but the mood is shifting. You buy a drink for the barkeep. You ask quiet questions. You stay a few extra days. And one night, when the townsfolk begin to gather near the girl's cottage with pitchforks and righteous indignation, you step out into the center of the square and speak. Your voice doesn't tremble. You tell them a story, not hers, not exactly, but enough to seed doubt, enough to crack the mirror before they even hold it up. And just like that, they pause. Not all of them, but some, and sometimes that's all it takes. Mainstream historical fact. In the late 17th century, the Salem witch trials ended largely because a few prominent citizens began to publicly question the validity of the evidence. Once a critical mass of doubt formed, the entire system collapsed under its own absurdity. Historians still debate whether this was due to moral awakening or just political embarrassment. You leave the next morning. No thanks, but no bloodshed either. Win-win. You start doing this more often, moving from town to town, listening, speaking when you need to. And when you don't, you watch, observe. Let the world teach you how fear works and how to loosen its grip. And slowly you realize something peculiar. You're becoming a myth. Not you exactly, but the idea of you, the whisper of a figure who shows up when accusations grow teeth, who can speak the right words to unravel a noose. Some call you a scholar. Some say you were born under a comet. One version claims you're cursed to roam forever, warning the living so the dead can rest. You don't correct them, because sometimes stories are stronger than truth. Quirky fringe tidbit. In rural parts of 18th century Wales, people believed in white witches figures who used knowledge, not sorcery, to protect the innocent. They were said to carry charms of copper and bone and walk with animals who whispered secrets. Some historians argue these white witches were just educated women, midwives, herbalists, storytellers, operating under new names to survive the tide. You're passing through a rocky pass one afternoon when you see her again. Not her, not Isolde, but a girl standing alone on the cliffside ribbon tied around her wrist, the same shade of faded crimson. She sees you, you see her. She nods, you nod back. Nothing else needs to be said. The truth, after all, isn't something you own. It's something you carry until someone else is strong enough to pick it up. And you realize then, this was never about redeeming yourself. It was about unbreaking the chain. And the chain, it's already changing hands. You settle for the night in a cave that smells like old smoke and damp wool. As you arrange your pack, you pull out the mirror shard. You kept the only piece that didn't disintegrate. You never meant to keep it. But it's useful now. A reminder, not of the lie, of the look in your own eyes the first time you saw the truth reflected back. Historians still argue whether these relics, these symbols of power and punishment, were ever truly magical. But you know better. The magic was never in the objects. It was in the choice, in the refusal to look away. You tuck the shard back into your pouch. You write something into the ash with your finger. No one else will see it. That's fine. It's for you. She wasn't a witch. She was a mirror. We burned the reflection. The wind wipes the words away a second later, and you smile, because now you're ready to live. Not just walk, not just worn, but live. Whatever that looks like, your path takes you south. Not for any particular reason, just that the wind feels warmer there, and the stars hang a little lower in the sky. You follow old roads that crumble into dirt and sometimes into nothing. You sleep beneath trees that creak like they're telling bedtime stories. You share bread with strangers who never ask for your name. And you begin to laugh again. Not often, but when you do, it's real. It climbs out of your chest like it forgot how heavy it used to be. You even dance once, barefoot, under lanterns strung between two leaning barns. A harvest festival in some village whose name you forget even as you're leaving it. A fiddler grins at you. A baker's daughter offers you cider. And for one golden hour the world forgets about flames and chains and curses. You forget too, only because even in peace the past hums. It doesn't haunt, but it hums. And then, in a smoky border town, you hear her name. Not yours, hers, Isolde, whispered by a woman in a green cloak who claims she saw her in a mirror. Not in a dream, not in memory, in a mirror. Just for a second, and you know it's starting again. Because some stories don't die, they reincarnate. They wear new names, find new lips, wait for a quieter world to listen. Mainstream historical fact. In the early 1700s, after witch trials had largely ended in Europe, folk tales about witches exploded in popularity. Scholars believe this was a cultural processing phase, a way for communities to turn trauma into entertainment, caution into myth. Historians still debate whether this trivialized the victims or kept their stories alive. You track the woman down 2 nights later. She's sitting near a fire, sipping from a tin mug, muttering to herself in a half-forgotten dialect. You offer her bread, she accepts, and then she looks you in the eye and says, "She told me you'd come." You freeze. She doesn't blink. She said, "Tell them the roots are shallow here, but the storm is deep. Tell them the ground remembers." You sit quietly, because what else can you do? She reaches into her cloak and pulls out something wrapped in velvet. A book. Leather cracked and sun-softened, bound with ribbon. The same ribbon, crimson. You take it. You don't ask where she got it. You already know. The book is handwritten. Spells no, not quite. Recipes, dreams, reflections, warnings. It's a journal. It's hers. Or maybe a copy. Or maybe one she never had time to write in life, but finally scribbled down in some liminal corner of the afterworld. You don't overthink it. You just turn the pages. A line catches your eye. We were never witches. We were memories scaffolding. They built fear atop us and called it truth. You close the book. You whisper thank you. The woman nods once, She walks between, still, just less often. You'll see her again. You smile, I know. Then she tosses the rest of her cider into the fire and walks into the woods like she never existed. You don't follow. You stay until morning, reading, memorizing, because you know what this is now. Not a haunting, not a punishment, a passing of the torch. Quirky historical tidbit. In certain Romani traditions, wisdom wasn't passed through bloodlines, but through gesture, an action, a talisman, a half-finished sentence. The idea being that true power is held not in possession, but in repetition. You don't own the story, you echo it. Historians still argue if this method led to distortions or protected truths through fluidity. So you start writing, not to explain, to echo. You fill page after page with the things you remember and the things you still don't. The places you walked, the words she said, the fear you once mistook for safety. And at the end of every entry, you sign, not your name but hers, Isolde, because she was never the villain. She was the anchor. You're just the current. When winter arrives, you build a fire in an abandoned chapel. The stained glass is mostly gone. Just one panel remains blue and gold-shaped like an eye. It watches you as you write. You smile at it. Don't worry, you say softly, I'll keep going. You leave the book under the altar, wrapped in oilcloth. Not hidden, just waiting, like the next part of the story always does. And as you step into the snow, you hear laughter on the wind. Not cruel, not mocking, just recognizing you laugh too. Because maybe, just maybe, the world is ready for more of the truth. Not the dramatic parts, but the quiet ones. The girl in the mirror. The boy who couldn't speak. The love that wasn't romantic but stubborn. The life that bloomed in the ashes. You walk on. The storm is deep, but you've got roots now, and they're strong. There's an inn tucked between two mossy cliffs, so old that the sign out front just shows a smudged crescent moon, and a scratch that might once have been a broom. No one remembers what it's called. Doesn't matter. The food's warm, the walls don't leak too badly, and the owner, a woman with one eye and a laugh like rolling dice, doesn't ask questions. You stay for a week, then 2, then you stop counting, not because you've quit wandering, but because even roots need rest. You help repair the shingles when storms roll in. You sweep floors. You learn to bake a passable oatcake. You tell stories at night, curled near the hearth, with travelers wide-eyed and leaning forward like children hearing fairy tales. You don't tell them it's all real. You let them believe it's just bedtime nonsense. Because some truths, they only settle when you stop hammering them in. The mirror shard sits behind the counter, now nestled between a jar of licorice buttons and a cracked ceramic hen. People glance at it. Few ask. You just say, it was part of a bigger thing, and that seems to satisfy most folks. One night, a little girl tugs at your sleeve and asks if you're a witch. You laugh. Would I admit it if I were? She thinks about it. Probably not. Well, there you go. She squints. But I think you used to be something. You ruffle her hair. So did you. And for a moment, it's like time folds back in on itself. Like the wind remembers a name it hasn't spoken in centuries. Mainstream historical fact. In post-trial Europe, many so-called witches were quietly reabsorbed into their communities once the hysteria faded. Some even became respected herbalists, teachers, or midwives, though their pasts were rarely spoken of. Historians still argue whether this forgiveness was genuine or simply convenient forgetfulness. You take long walks in the morning, up the hill, down the path, along the river that always smells slightly of wild mint. Sometimes in the frost-touched silence you hear a voice, not loud, not spooky, Just a murmur that feels like old laughter. Still dragging your boots like that, it teases. And you grin. Because she's not gone. She's just free. That's the difference. Freedom doesn't mean vanishing. It means not needing to linger. You pass a grave one morning, unmarked, half swallowed by ivy. But someone's laid stones around it. Smooth, intentional. A pattern you recognize from the book she left you. A circle within a circle. Protection. Memory. Legacy. Quirky fringe tidbit. In certain Slavic traditions, unmarked graves were decorated with spiral-shaped stones to confuse spirits who might linger. But in some cases, the spiral was a gift, a way to help the soul spin forward into its next life. Historians still argue over the original meaning, but folklore insists the spiral always points the way out. You pause at the grave, whisper a thank you, then keep walking. The girl from earlier, the one with too many questions, finds you at the river one afternoon. Tell me a scary one, she says. You raise an eyebrow. You sure? She nods fiercely. You begin. There was once a village that thought they knew everything. But what they really knew was how to be afraid. You weave the story gently, not too fast, not too dark. She listens with wide eyes, and when you're done, she says, "Did they ever learn?" You smile. Some of them did. Did you? You look at the water. It ripples like it's in on the joke. "I'm still learning," you say. She pats your arm. "That's okay. I think you're doing good." Kids, brutally honest, emotionally clairvoyant, terrifying. She skips away, leaving you with that strange sense again that you're both the last page and the first. The inn gets busier that season. People come from farther, stay longer, share more. Not about witches, not outright, but about lost sisters, mysterious dreams, unexplained kindnesses, stubborn hope. The language changes. The fear doesn't vanish, but it shifts, becomes curiosity. And one evening, someone hangs a small charm above the fireplace. Twisted wire, 3 loops, a ribbon. No one says where it came from. No one asks, but everyone leaves it there, just in case. The world doesn't need saving. Not all at once. It just needs small repairs, gentle truths, quiet reweavings. And you're very good at that now. So you keep telling the story. Not just hers, but yours. And theirs. All the ones that didn't get to finish. All the ones that burned without a voice. All the ones branded, buried, blamed. They're not gone. They're just waiting for someone to speak their names in the dark. And tonight, that someone is you. Word count 176. Wind down final 300 words. So now as the fire dwindles and the corners of the room blur into shadow, you breathe in slow. Let the story linger, not in the sharp edges, but in the soft truths it left behind. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't magic. She was memory stitched with grief and laughter, and that stubborn kind of love that endures even through smoke. And you're not the same either. You've walked with ghosts. You've stitched together your own past, with fragments, regrets, and maybe even a little grace. You've chosen to see not just what was done, but what could be undone. And that changes things, not with a bang, with a whisper. So as your breath evens out, and the last word fades into the hush of night, just remember, the world is full of old echoes. Not all of them mean harm. Some are just waiting to be heard again, gently, patiently, in the quiet spaces we usually rush past. So rest easy now. The fire's low, but it's enough. You're safe. She's safe. The story will wait for you. And when you're ready, you'll pick it up again. Not because you have to, but because someone always does. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.